You're listening to Ret Read Podcast. I'm Anna.
I'm Serge, and we're here to talk about books we've read.
Hope you enjoy. Hey, Serge.
Hey, Anna. I'm really excited to record another wonderful episode of Ret Read Podcast with you.
For the next month or so, it's going to be October, and we're running our Ret Read Podcast giveaway special.
October, definitely a special month for the Fear Street series, a month full of frights and delights. And for our giveaway, we're giving away a t-shirt and a book. The t-shirt is our official podcast t-shirt, and you can get it in small, medium, large, and extra large. Those are the sizes we have. If that's not your size, we're sorry. We had to buy these with our own money, so we can buy every single size under the rainbow.
In addition to that, the books we'll be giving out are books that I've read over the years and I've really enjoyed, and they're not Fear Street books.
Actually, Fear Street books are hard to come by.
There's also some candy or other treats that we're going to be sending your way. And you might be curious as to how do you enter for this giveaway?
Right, so those of you who don't know yet, the way you enter is find the link to enter the giveaway on our blog, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
So for each giveaway, you're going to have a total of 3 questions. Each question you get correct will count as an entry for that giveaway. So if you get all 3 questions right, you'll get 3 entries into that giveaway. If you only get 2, you'll get 2 entries. But a freebie that we're giving out is if you follow us on Twitter, you will automatically get 1 free entry. You just have to let us know your handle at the end of the quiz. There is a little box. So for each giveaway, there is a total of 4 chances. The 1 Twitter freebie and the 3 questions. Please enter only once.
Yeah, guys, let's not try to game the system here by spoofing multiple accounts, right? Although I know you guys wouldn't try doing that because you guys are all really cool. Listen, if you've just been listening for the last couple episodes, you don't want to go back and re-listen to everything, just answer the trivia questions, that's fine. That 1 trivia question is enough to win the contest, so don't sweat about it.
It's only open for people 18 and older. We just want to know we're not sending anything risque out, but different countries have different laws, and it's just easier for everybody if we do it this way. We're sorry. It is open internationally, except void where prohibited. We're super excited. We're going to be running 4 giveaways for the month, so keep your eyes open.
And if we run out of your size of t-shirt, we're sorry. It might happen. So enter the first giveaway for sure to get a chance at for sure getting one of the sizes I mentioned earlier.
The first giveaway should be up. Good luck. Now that we're done with that, let's get into some books.
Yeah, let's get into the fun stuff. You and I both recently read Good Morning Midnight
by Lily Brooks-Dalton. It came out in 2015.
And we both pretty much enjoyed the book, I would say, right?
Thought it was okay. I think you enjoyed it more than I did.
I think I gave it a 3 on Goodreads. We both definitely had some nitpicks and problems with this book, but despite the problems, I really did enjoy it. I really enjoyed, first of all, just the vivid imagery of the Arctic wilderness and the outer solar system, namely the Galilean moons of Jupiter. It sounded beautiful. Really did like that. So what could go wrong? Well, we did find a lot of things wrong with the story.
I thought it was a well-written but poorly researched book. There were definitely parts that either scientifically or procedurally that didn't make sense. I think a lot of the nitpicks I have would be spoilers for the book. I'll just say, I don't think how they described some things would be how NASA would allow things to happen. I think that if people were evacuating the ISS with a crew out, there would be some things left behind that would tell the crew that's coming in at some point what happened. There were also some things in terms of radio signals and also radios on Earth. I think you want to go in more detail on that?
You know what? I feel like the author did do a lot of research on radio communications and space travel, especially given her background. Probably didn't know a lot about it to begin with and then educated herself. And it shows there's a lot of stuff here that is not something a layman would have at their fingertips, but she went ahead and she found all this information. That's great, but it's still coming up short, with lots of errors that are just blatantly obvious to somebody with a background in the sciences or engineering, such as myself or Anna here. And the problem here is I just have a nitpick. How hard could it be to find a scientist to consult on your book, to send out a manuscript for review? I could have done this, right? If she had, obviously, who am I? But if she knew me, she could have sent the manuscript to me and I could have read it. There's like 10 things I would have found and it would have probably made it flow a little bit better for people like me. The book's not really about space travel or or radio communications. Those are just plot devices to move along something different.
It's multiple points of view. There is a male protagonist who's back on Earth, and then there's a female protagonist in the spaceship, and they both have issues within their own families. You get their inner thoughts, and you get a lot of their history, their background, how they became who they are, just based on how they grew up, the people they interacted with during the formative years of their lives, and how they got to where they are at this moment. The male protagonist, Augie, he's on Earth, and he's presumably the last man on Earth.
Augustine, actually. He goes
Yeah. He goes by Augie, though.
Yeah.
And then out in space, you have Sullivan. She's one of the 6 scientists that was chosen to go on this mission to Jupiter. You just see how they handle the situations that they're given based on their history and how it's influenced their decisions. So you see why Augustine has ended up to become the last man on Earth based on his family background and his educational background. And you see how Sully has ended up where she is and how she deals with her crewmates and works with them to deal with the situation because they know that there's something going on Earth. And it's like a whole psychological thing of how do the 6 people who think everyone they love and left behind to go on this presumably 4 to 6 year mission, was it?
That's the part that we both agree works for us, is the family story, be it the story of the people out in space and them and their families, all seen from the point of view of Sully, or be it Augie's story down on Earth. That part works for us. What worked for me, again, like I said, the vivid Arctic imagery that Augie finds himself among. We already mentioned the nitpick. The one thing I have to say that really took away maybe a star and a half on my review is gotta be the growing sense throughout the narrative that the author has no freaking clue what has caused humans to disappear. And this isn't a spoiler. You find out right away that humans disappeared. But if there was some sense of mystery, like you feel like the information exists somewhere as to what actually happened, and as long as the information exists, if only in the author's brain, maybe she didn't give us enough clues to ever figure out, but at least you can rest assured in the knowledge that she knows. But you never get that sense. You get the sense that she has no clue, doesn't care. And maybe that's okay, maybe we shouldn't care, but there are certain parts of the book that lead you to kind of want to find out what happened. Just because you start to identify with a lot of the characters that want to find out what happens. And you start feeling for them, you start feeling their desire to find out what happened. Not only do you not get to find out what happened, you feel like it's a complete cop-out on the author's part and she had no idea.
I'm honestly okay with the fact that we're never told what happened on Earth and that maybe the author doesn't care, because I understand that that's not what the book is about. It's about how people handle it psychologically. But I do kind of agree that with every theory that you can think of, there's a problem with how it plays out. Like, if you think war, well, war wouldn't work because blah, blah, blah. If you think a chemical warfare type thing, a biological agent of some sort, there's problems there. If it's a solar flare, there's problems there. There's like little problems with every little thing, a viral outbreak, zombies, etc., etc. Like, you can go pretty far-fetched, aliens. Every theory that you can think of, it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense. I feel like this is the type of book, if you go out of your way to try to think about what happened, you're not going to like it. I think you just need to sit back, enjoy the writing style, think about the characters, like get in the characters' minds and the psychological well-being, because I think it's one of those books.
So I think the problem then has got to be the setting. If she had done something 100 years further in the future, and now a person in space doesn't have to be one of the top minds that humanity can muster for this scientific mission to Jupiter. They sent 6 of the brightest people they can find. They're at the top of their form physically and mentally, and the guy left on Earth is no slouch either when it comes to his brains. So you got these people who literally go through everything we just listed, all the theories, and then they one by one break down each one and go like, well, that can't be because of XYZ reason. Like you just said, it doesn't matter why humans disappeared. When you give the role of being the last humans to people who have the capacity to figure out that none of the regular reasons make sense, then that bounces back on the reader, and the reader goes, wait a minute, these qualified people figured out that there's no possible reason how this could have happened? Well, that's puzzling. Versus if it was some people not qualified to ponder as to what happened, might have been like, yeah, warp could have happened, yeah, that seems reasonable, and just moved on, you would have been able to just focus on the narrative and the interplay of the characters. Like you mentioned, is what you're supposed to be focusing on in this story. They keep coming back to it. They keep wondering what could have happened. That makes sense. That's the kind of people they are. That keeps raising the question back up over and over again. A question that, for the purposes of this story, should really be relegated to the background, especially since the author seems to have no idea what actually happened.
Well, let's go along with that because this is a character novel. I did have a problem with Sully as a character. We're told that she deserves to be here, and I don't really think the author did a good job conveying that, and I don't think that, with what we saw of her, that she was developed enough as a character.
Well, I think that's a valid point in regards to her character not being as well developed as it could have been. I agree with that. I think the other main character, Augie, was a little bit better developed. You could see his motivations and how he ended up where he was a little bit better than her. For sure, I can agree with that.
I do think the book was a little predictable as well. I think the author wanted to keep this mysterious element of the book. There's like this one thing that she's trying to hide from the readers. But the problem is, by chapter 2, it's really obvious.
Yeah, we figured it out right away. We saw it coming a mile away and we were like, yep. And everything was pointing towards it. We were like, yep.
It's sort of funny and frustrating. You know what it is. And you can see that the author is like, the readers will never see this coming. And you're sitting there like, okay.
We're not as dumb as we look.
Thanks a lot. What I think is interesting about Good Morning Midnight is actually the fact that, is it the alternate past of us? If we gave more money to NASA, would we have sent a ship to Jupiter already? Because in this book, Cassini is still around.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Cassini's still around, but yet we also have a Voyager 3 and we have a manned mission to Jupiter. So yes, I think it is an alternate reality where the space program was given a lot more funding and we're much more advanced in 2017 than we are otherwise. Because obviously, we all know Cassini sadly went up in flames or went down in flames, however you want to look at it, just a couple of weeks ago as it ended its mission to Saturn after 19 long years. And in this book, Cassini's still going strong. So
September 15th at 7:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So you figure this book must have taken place before September 15th, 2017. The other thing I don't get, though, is how did the timelines diverge? Because the Cassini mission, the planning stages of it would have probably taken place in the 90s, and the mission parameters and the names seem to be the same, so the divergence would have happened in the 90s, I guess? But overall, the book was pretty good. If you like The Martian by Andy Weir, you will probably like this book.
I disagree. This is nothing like The Martian.
Well, it certainly isn't for everybody. I personally liked it. I gave it 3 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. And what did you give this book?
It was a 2.75 rounded to a 3. It's nothing like The Martian. This is more lyrical prose with character background, and The Martian is not that. One more book I want to talk about before we move on is Deceit and Other Possibilities. It's a book of short stories by Vanessa Hua. It's focusing on the immigrant and or the first-gen experience. Specifically, most of the stories focus on the experience of East Asians. They're stories that focus on people making poor choices in life and having to deal with the consequences or about to see the consequences coming. Each of the stories have characters that have unique voices and stand apart from each other, which actually isn't something you always see in a short story collection by the same author. I read one book of short stories where I think all the characters were interchangeable and it was just frustrating to read. So I do like that about this book. Some stories seem to have inspirations from real life. There's a story that is so obviously Edison Chen. I read like maybe the first page of the story and I was like, this is Edison Chen. If you don't know who Edison Chen is, just Google him. And then there's the Asia Kim story. She's that girl from Stanford. Look her up too. But what's interesting is telling the stories from their points of view. So in her version of Edison's or her version of Asia's point of view, I think it lends well because you are wondering like what's going through their head, and it was just fun to see like that mentality of how someone could pretend to be a student in a college for a year with no one finding out, and what is their motivation of doing that. And another good thing about Deceit and Other Possibilities is I don't think that it was front-loaded or back-loaded. A lot of short story collections tend to have the best stories in the front, and by the end you're just really tired of it. And I think Ted Chiang's book, Story of Your Life, you know, the Arrival short story, I think that's an example of something that's front-loaded. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but some short story collections are back-loaded where you slog through stories, you almost give up, you randomly flip to one of the later stories, and it just picks up steam. This book is consistent throughout. I actually gave this book 4.5 out of 5, which rounds to 5 on Goodreads. Highly recommend it if you're looking for a new book of short stories.
Wow. High praise from the usually stern and judgy Anna.
I don't think that's true. Are you gaslighting me?
Actually, fun fact, I have no idea what the term gaslighting means. I never bothered to look it up.
Via Wikipedia, gaslighting is a form of manipulation that seeks to sow seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or members of a group, hoping to make them question their own memory, perception, and sanity. Speaking of gaslighting, after the intermission, we're going to be talking about
Fear Street, the best friend.
I can't believe it, the girl cried. I just can't believe it. Becka, it's you. It's really you. Becka gasped, utterly speechless. Who is this girl? She asked herself. I've never seen her before.
Now you guys are wondering, like, okay, that's weird. Is there going to be a best friend that's not a best friend? Well, before we get into that, let's do prediction accuracy. Anna, how'd you do?
I slayed.
Wow.
I said that it'd be someone new in town, either the main character or the best friend character.
Yep.
I said the new girl in town becomes a best friend, maybe an unwanted best friend.
Okay.
And then I said the person becomes stalkerish and out of jealousy kills the other friends.
Almost.
I said it'd be blunt force trauma, but that's because you took knife. I said the victim would be female and the murderer is female.
Wow, so you're really close. Victim actually ended up being male in this case. For all intents and purposes, you basically, I would say you got like a 90% on this.
Where I got my inspiration from is actually an episode of Frasier. It was called The Friend.
Guys, I'm so tired of this segment of the show. I'm wrong again. The only thing I was right about was the weapon. It was a knife. But other than that, I had this cockamamie scheme based on looking at the cover where a mom comes downstairs, none of the kids are up, and it's strange, but she opens a gift from her husband, but there's a knife sticking out of it, there's a ransom note, and all her kids are kidnapped. And there's a high schooler from Shady Side, gets kidnapped by her best friend. The victim is female, kidnapper is male, and all of those things are wrong. And then I said the weapon would be a knife, and Anna was like, but how can there be a murder weapon if there's no murder? So I said, no one's gonna die, but a knife will be used. So, oh my goodness.
You said it'd definitely be a kidnapping.
Yeah, I did so badly.
But this is one of those covers that has nothing to do with the book at all.
I appreciate your kind words. Let's get into the basic plot synopsis, shall we?
It's December. We're
Yay!
getting a Christmas book.
Yeah, wasn't the last one? Or the one before that?
That's the super chiller we read. Silent
Okay.
Night. So Becka Norwood just broke up with her boyfriend and is hanging out with her two best friends when a girl bursts into her room. The girl claims to have been best friends with Becka in elementary school and has finally moved back to town so they can become best friends forever again. Problem is, Becka has no clue who this girl is or anything that she's talking about.
During this introductory scene, like, the mom comes in asking if they want cookies or something. The girl is like, oh, hey, Mrs. Norwood, long time no see. And she's clearly just going, ooh.
She backs out of the room and
Yeah.
just leaves.
She clearly doesn't remember her either.
It slowly gets creepier as the girl starts showing up everywhere and starts copying everything about Becka. And Becka, is she going crazy or is something going on here?
Start off with Becca is one of those main characters that lives on Fear Street itself in an old fancy kind of house. It's just the usual Fear Street house. She looks like a model in 17 magazine. She has light blonde hair, almond-shaped green eyes, high cheekbones, pale white skin, and a hint of a cleft in her chin. And she recently got a haircut that she saw in a magazine, and it's left her with a sleek, chic new look that her friends are just really into. I just want to say, like, she's kind of a pretty generic main character. You don't hate her, you don't like her. You know, she has some good, she has some bad, and she's kind of mostly just there for the ride.
I think she has to be a middle-of-the-road character. As long as you pity her as the book goes on, that's all you really need to do.
Honestly, anybody in her situation, you would pretty much just pity. Although, Reva in her situation, that I would like to see. That would be something.
We have the best friend. Her name is Honey Perkins. She claims to have moved to the house next door on Fear Street, supposedly. She claims to have been best friends with Becca in 3rd and 4th grade. She has a mane of long auburn hair that she eventually cuts to have the same chic haircut as Becca. She has a full figure, not exactly pretty, but dramatic looking with round gray eyes and full lips. What really stands out are her big hands that seem to be the wrong size. They're out of proportion with the rest of her. It's just her and her dad. Her mom supposedly died the previous year. She constantly talks about her past friendships with Becca. Just story after story. Everything's remember when?
Every single time, Becca just can't seem to remember when. Next up, we have Eric Fraser. He dated Becka for 3 months before she dumped him. She dumps him in basically the first chapter. It's kind of reminiscent of Silent Night, same kind of situation, except it goes a little bit differently. He has short brown hair, giggles at inappropriate times, and is kind of needy.
He never comes off as needy because he seems to give zero shits that she's breaking up with him.
I guess one of the reasons she breaks up with him is that she thinks he's too needy. Also, that he can never seem to hold a good conversation with her, never really wants to talk. Anyway, he has problems. She has problems. They don't work together.
He has problems, but you don't really see them. Becka gets really upset that he doesn't care that she broke up with him, and she spends 2 chapters bitching about that.
She also, despite being angry about the breakup, angry at him, by the way, within seconds of breaking up, or even before breaking up, already thinking about Bill Planter, her ex. He used to date her like a year ago, and she dumped him and started going out with Eric. The reason she dumped him was because he got into a little bit of trouble with the school, namely he got suspended and then he got held back a grade. He's a bad boy that Becca's parents did not approve of.
Well, you said that he had to repeat senior year, but he was actually failing even without the suspension. So regardless of if he was suspended or not, he would have failed and had to repeat anyways.
That's true. Earlier we had a complaint that R.L. Stine doesn't write bad boys very well. This is like probably the least creepy bad boy he's ever written. He was kind of likable, even though he really was a bad boy. He kept trying to get her to sneak out without telling her parents. Next we got
Trish Walters. She's one of Becca's best friends. She's described as having blue eyes. She's had braces for a year. She's short and chubby with curly auburn hair and has a mischievous face. She says that if she got the haircut Becca did, she'd be a bowling ball with legs.
And finally, we have Becca's other best friend. Lila Brewer is tall and thin, and she compares herself to a stork. She's basically described as being a little bit too tall. That's actually kind of interesting. Right before we get into the in-depth plot here, I just realized something. You have Trish, who's too short. You have Lila, who's too tall. Becca is just right. Now, this reminds you of the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And the final character in this book is Honey. What? Right?
I guess so.
Obviously, Honey bears coincidence? I think not.
Let's get into the in-depth plot. What I thought was interesting is the timeline of the story. So I've actually noted the days of what's happening, and you can see how quickly things just spiral.
Yeah, like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, about 2 weeks. When you first meet Becca, it's Friday night. Becca dumps Eric, breaks up with him while thinking about Bill, and she's upset that Eric's not upset.
He actually looks pretty upset. He's just kind of trying to act stoic and not show it.
But whatever. She decides that she needs to go visit her ex, Bill, who she isn't over to cheer herself up about Eric not being upset about her breaking up with him. It's totally normal, but whatever. She T-bones a car on the way to the old village where Bill lives.
She's spacing out so she doesn't notice that she's coming up to a stop sign, and she hits on the brake and the car keeps sliding because it's wintertime. Everything's covered in snow.
You next see Becca on Saturday hanging out with Trish and Lila in her room.
Yeah, and they're laughing about Eric not making a scene after the breakup. I think they're trying to make her feel better about whatever it is she's upset about. I'm not sure they actually see why she's upset. They might be on the same page as you and I.
But it's actually a cool scene where you just see the 3 friends hanging out. You don't see many good friends scenes in the Fear Street series. They always seem to be like kind of bad friends. In First Date, she was not a good friend. In some other books, they're just sort of there, but then as soon as something happens, they'll run off like, oh, I need to talk to this person. So they're never part of the plot. And what I like about this book is it sets up the Trish, Lila, Becca friendship very well. They're joking with each other. They know about each other's families. You know, they can make fun of each other and none of them get their feelings hurt. Becca's trying to knit a sweater for her cousin Rachel, and Trish and Lila are making fun of like how ugly the sweater is. And it's pretty great. I actually really enjoy that scene.
Actually, yeah, now that you mention that, if you compare this to The Prom Queen, where you also had a group of 3 good friends, one of them had this personality where she had to win at everything. It was probably a little bit damaging to the friendship. And the other one was really hung up about her own issues, and that caused problems as well. Here we have 3 best friends that aren't afraid of telling each other stuff. Like you just mentioned, I have to agree with you, definitely compared to Prom Queen, this is a much healthier relationship between 3 best friends. And it's funny, right? Because the book's called The Best Friend, and here we have one of the best friendships we've seen so far in the Fear Street series. Unfortunately for Becca, that's not the friendship the book title refers to.
because during their awesome hangout, a girl named Honey bursts in. She's bouncing all over the place, excited about reuniting with her former BFF from 3rd and 4th grade. Becca is just sitting there like, who is this girl?
Yeah, she starts to feel like a little bit awkward and guilty for not remembering, because she starts to doubt herself. Maybe I did have a best friend in 3rd grade and 4th grade and I just don't remember. What an awful person I am for forgetting.
What's cool is what happens afterwards, because you have another scene that shows the close friendship between Trish, Lila, and Becca, because Becca's obviously uncomfortable and she just starts darting her eyes over at Trish and Lila, and they pick it up very quickly. They just start introducing themselves to Honey. Do you remember that scene in Gilmore Girls where Lorelai has to go to her parents' second marriage, and then she tells Luke, I have no clue who any of these people are. They all know who I am. You need to do the thing where I'm drinking, my mouth is full of water, you introduce yourself, so by the time they've introduced themselves, I can just say, oh, it's nice to see you again, Mr. and Mrs. blah 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 blah. And I think that this is very reminiscent of that, where they don't need Becca to say anything. They can see that Becca's uncomfortable and they'll automatically just step right up and go, hey, let's help our friend out in this situation. And that is another great show not telling of what a good trio they are.
There was a moment of tension there when Honey burst in, and as I was reading it, I felt worried for Becca. I said to myself, how is she going to figure out Honey's name? She's never seen her before. Maybe she doesn't remember her. This is such an awkward situation. And then her friends just came in like the freaking cavalry, rescued the situation. You're right. That's what great friendship is all about.
So Honey tells everyone her name is Honey Perkins, but after that, she ignores Lila and Trish. They keep asking her questions to try to figure out who she is, and she just pretends they are not there.
Honey just starts going through all of Becca's stuff, and she picks up a parrot pin that Bill had bought for Becca. It's actually Becca's favorite pin. It's the only memento she keeps of Bill, and she just loves this little parrot.
Now you have story number 1 from Honey. She tells a story about how back when they were younger, they found this injured bird that Becca took home and tried to nurse back to health, and they cried and cried when it died. And Honey's just like, don't you remember that? And Becca's inner monologue is, I have no clue what she's talking about. But what she says out loud is, yeah, sure. I remember.
And then so it begins, right? You let this little insidious thing slip through and it just starts devolving. So now Honey is asking to put the pin on. Hey, can I try it on? I want to see how it looks on me.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Then it goes further. Honey says that Becca's posters are amazing. Becca is already really frazzled, makes an offhand remark, hey, maybe it's time to change them up. Honey pounces on that. She's like, hey, can I have them then? Becca doesn't even know what to do, so she's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then Honey goes, well, we're still unpacking. There's cartons everywhere. I'll come back for them later. And then she leaves.
Right, and it almost makes it look like she's doing Becca a favor, not tearing the posters off the wall right that instant.
After Honey leaves, the trio just stare at each other. What just happened?
The best way they can find to deal with it is to just joke around about it. They finally figure out that they were all in the same 4th grade class with Miss Martin. Becca actually manages to dig the class photo out of an old shoebox.
There Honey is, in the upper right-hand corner. It clicks. They remember who she is. She was the weird girl that almost never spoke, and when she was caught on in class, she'd choke, turn white, and sputter, and no one liked her.
They proceed to make a few more jokes at her expense. Because, yeah, she's a total weirdo.
So as Trish and Lila are leaving, Becca realizes that Honey stole the parrot pin. And they say, you know what? She probably just forgot about it. Just ask her. Go over and ask her about it.
So Bill calls Becca's house, and Becca's mom is super displeased. Bill asks Becca to sneak out to meet him, which she refuses. So Becca's mom is just hounding her about this phone call, and Becca's like, I gotta go right now. And her mom's like, are you gonna go see Bill? Are you trying to sneak out? And she's like, no, I'm just going next door, Mom. God, just shut up. Or, something like that. And she storms over next door to Honey's house to see about the pin.
Unfortunately, when she gets there, the house is just dark.
Yeah, she can't even see any footprints, really. There's this really old set of prints that is all completely snowed over and crusted. It looks like it had already had time to melt a couple times, refreeze, and then had a fresh dusting of snow over it.
So she's really confused, doesn't know what's going on, ends up going back home.
Now she's very suspicious about Honey. First of all, it seems like she's making stuff up, and B, she seems like she's really making stuff up about living next door. door.
Monday after school, she goes home and there's someone talking in her room. She thinks maybe it's her mom, and she opens the door and there's Honey.
Yeah, apparently she's just talking to herself and going through her whole closet, which she's emptied out onto the bed, and she's trying stuff on.
And Becka asks her, how did you get in?
And Honey's like, oh yeah, your mom let me, and then she just stepped out.
Honey's wearing one of Becca's new skirts that she just bought from Peterman's in the Old Village. She wanted to wear it for Trish's party. And then she just starts swapping out different tops, and Becca's sitting there like, I haven't even worn that skirt yet. How can she do this? This is super rude. Honey just starts reminiscing again. Remember how they used to wear each other's clothes, trading everything, even jeans, even socks? They wouldn't remember what was whose. They were just like twins. And Becca's just like, sure. Even though in her internal monologue, she goes, I have no clue what she's talking about.
All of the weirdness aside, she still wants her parrot pin back, so she asks her about the house being empty, and Honey claims it's because the furnace wouldn't start up, so she and her dad had to stay at a motel. When Becka insists about the parrot pin, this is like the first real WTF moment of the book.
Honey lunges over, grabs Becka by the throat, and starts choking her.
So she starts choking her with those oversized hands of hers.
And this is 40 pages into the book, guys. Yeah. And then after Honey lets go, she just starts laughing. And then story number 3 comes out. When they were younger, they used to play the gotcha game, where they do the worst things to each other. Like in 3rd grade, Becka pulled up Honey's dress in front of an entire busload of Cub Scouts, and Honey's never paid her back for that. Becka has no clue what Honey's talking about. And I just want to add that, so even if you did that to someone in 3rd grade, the equal and opposite response is not to try to suffocate them to death.
Which she could have done. She let go right before Becka passed out.
Like, even if this was a game that you played, like, I don't see how that is just appropriate at all. But whatever, I've never played the gotcha game.
The gotcha game excuse works because Becka just shrugs it off and asks Honey once again, hey, how about that parrot pin?
Did you accidentally take it or something? And Honey tossed a thick strand of hair behind her shoulders. You gave it to me, Becka, remember? Huh? Becca's mouth dropped open in disbelief. I what? You gave the pin to me, Honey insisted cheerily. No, It was very sweet of you, Honey said, a warm smile spreading across her face. No, Honey, wait, Becka said, feeling her pulse throb against her temples. You asked to try the pin on, and then you said that since I liked it so much, I could keep it. Honey's smile faded. She stared at Becka now with a hurt expression, her full lips lowered in another pout. You did say I could keep it, Becka, but... Honey? Becka suddenly realized that Honey was really upset. Her shoulders were trembling. Her lips were quivering. Ask your friends, Honey said defensively. Ask those 2 girls. They'll tell you. They saw you give it to me. Really? Becka couldn't decide what to do. Honey, she saw, was about to burst into hysterical tears. Becka didn't want that. She wanted her pin back, but she didn't want a big emotional scene. Most of all, she just wanted Honey to leave. You gave the pin to me, Honey said, softening her tone. And now it's my most special possession. I will always treasure it, Becka.
Honey's a freak, right? Like a total freak. If you haven't figured it up till now, after this scene, you know, the choking thing, the lies about the pin, it's all there.
Becka, in an attempt to get Honey to leave, asked Honey to help her put her clothing back into the closet. Maybe if I can get her to help me clean up, she'll just leave. And it'll be great and I'll be rid of her. When they're starting to pick up some clothing, Honey sees a stain on a shirt that she was wearing, and she says that she'll take it home to clean it.
And then Becka tries to talk her out of it because, hey, that's her shirt. She doesn't want Honey to just walk out with yet another one of her possessions, but Honey makes some excuses.
But then Honey starts talking about, oh, times again, we have another story coming up.
Right, this is as they're putting the clothing away, something to talk about while they're putting everything away. Apparently, they used to walk to school together every morning. I almost feel like this is already self-contradictory because Honey's so excited she's finally living next to Becka. If they didn't live close together beforehand, then how could they have walked to school together, right? That'd be a complete fabrication because Becca's lived in this same house this whole time. Anyway, Honey wants to do it again now, and Becka tries to stop that by saying that her dad gives her rides and she also rides her bike sometimes. So now... Honey gets really interested in what kind of bike Becka has so she can get the same kind of bike and, continue to just insinuate her way into every single aspect of Becca's life, like some kind of parasitic worm. So then Becca's like, all right, let's get some backstory on this girl. She asks Honey where she moved to, and she just says, upstate. And then she talks about how she remembers moving day clearly.
I can still remember that awful day so clearly, even though I was only 9. Can't you? Yeah, I guess, Becca replied uncomfortably. I don't remember talking to her when I was 9. Remember the two of us sitting on the curb in front of my house, our arms around each other's shoulders, crying and crying, just crying our eyes out? Wow, that was awful. Remember? Yeah, Becca said, avoiding Honey's stare. And remember that guy stopped his car and took our picture? He thought it was such a touching scene. He snapped our picture, and that made us cry even harder. Honey sighed and leaned back, supporting herself with her hands. It was the worst day of my life, Becca. It really was.
Who drives by, sees two girls on a curb holding each other crying, and decides to take a picture? What? Don't you think that's strange? Okay, whatever. Anyway, moving on. Becca's had enough of this shit, and she's like trying to kick Honey out again because fuck this. And Honey finally starts to leave, but not before. Honey ends up trying to get her to come over and study instead of just leaving the house. Hey, I'm on my way out to study. Why don't you come with me and study, right? And then Becca's like, no, I already have plans to hang out with Lila. And then Honey gets really weird and starts asking Becca about her friendship with Lila and Trish. Kind of almost like feels jealous, right? It feels like she's a little bit jealous. But finally she leaves.
And Becca's mom comes home right after that. And Becca asks her, how can you let someone come into my room like that? You know I don't like people going through my stuff. And her mom just goes, what are you talking about? I was never home.
Apparently she was never home. She didn't let Honey in. And again, how does it work that Honey's ingratiating herself with her mom, and yet there's clear evidence of her just breaking and entering here? Okay, whatever. We'll mention that later.
Wednesday after school. Lila and Becca plan on going for a nice bike ride to get some exercise by biking up the hills to River Road. Just remember, it's December. It's one of those rare December days where it's nice out and you can just ride your bike and have fun. And, you know, they got a little cabin fever. They want to exercise outdoors. It's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, so they're going to go right up and down the North Hills through those streets over there, which are apparently very hilly. So as Lila and Becca walk out of the school over to the bike rack, Becca immediately notices that Honey is waiting by the bikes and is kind of snooping around, looking at the bikes there. And as they walk over, it becomes evident that Honey is actually waiting to go with them, even though she doesn't have a bike, so she can't. Becca says, you don't have a bike, so you can't come with us, obviously. And then Becca and Lila pedal off into the hills. They talk about Honey.
Becca talks about how 1 minute Honey's ecstatically happy and the next minute she's ready to weep bitter tears. Becca says she doesn't tell Honey to get lost because maybe she's not so bad and she's just really insecure.
They're going down the second hill. This is before even all the big hills come, right? And Becca notices that there's a brown delivery truck coming towards the intersection. She starts to slow down. She tells Lila to slow down too, but for some reason Lila isn't slowing down.
And as she's hurtling down that hill, Lila screams, "My brakes!"
Becca closes her eyes. She can't bear to watch, and she hears a thump and a crunch. Next thing she knows, she's basically just sitting on the curb crying as the paramedics are there. The police left her alone. She's not even able to give them a statement because she's so distraught. Somebody tells her that Lila is still alive, but she doesn't remember much. It's all just a blur.
She does see Lila's bike, and she takes a look at it, and it turns out one of Lila's brake cables is missing. So she had no rear wheel brakes working, and the way that it was missing, it was clear that it had to be cut on both sides and removed.
After she gets home, she talks to Bill on the phone again, and she tells him all about what just happened to Lila. She tells him about Honey and like how weird that whole situation is, and they make plans for Saturday night.
Well, during the phone call, Becca looks up and Honey's at the door. Becca obviously hangs up on Bill, where Honey runs in and just starts hugging and soothing her and patting her and holding her about the whole Lila thing. And Becca tells Honey that she just wants to be alone. Honey's dark lips formed a small O of surprise, but she quickly recovered her concerned expression. "Of course you do, Becca." And then we get another story. "You were always like that. Even when we were little, you always had to sit and figure things out by yourself." Honey shook her head. "You are such a loner sometimes."
Yeah, the other interesting thing about this conversation is that this is right after the accident. How did Honey find out that the accident happened? But she says she did somehow. She's like, I heard what happened. And then later, she's acting as if Lila had died in the accident when we know she actually survived. I think she's not in great condition, but she just broke a bunch of bones. It's not life-threatening anyway. So it was a really suspicious scene. Becca just wants Honey to leave. She has no time for this bullshit right now after everything has just happened.
Well, then they have this weird conversation where, well, I'm going home, Honey continued. I just came to say that I'm here if you need me. You don't have Lila anymore, so I want you to know I'm right here for you, whenever. You don't have Lila anymore? Is that what Honey said? What did you say? Becka cried. I said I'm right here for you, Honey said, retreating to the door. No, I heard what you said. I heard what you said about Lila. You don't have Lila anymore. Something about the way Honey said those words gave Becka a chill. And then she just bursts into tears because of the whole Lila situation, and also because this crazy girl is standing in her room. The stress just breaks her. She's just crying uncontrollably.
So then Trish comes in. Really great best friend moment. She comes right in Becca's time of need to comfort her, but as Honey's on her way out, she kind of shepherds Trish out with her like, she just wants to be alone right now. There's no time to be here. And she just kind of like forces her to leave right as she's leaving, even though she just got there. You know, Lila's also Trish's friend, and maybe Becca and Trish could commiserate about. Nope, Honey's taking charge. This is a crazy situation. It's just getting worse and worse. Now fast forward to Saturday night when Becca made plans to have a date with Bill. They're in a steamy car parked on River Ridge.
And they're making out, and obviously the topic of Honey comes up. And Bill asks the question of, what's up with Honey? Is she just a pest or something? Pest isn't the word for it, Becca replied unhappily. I had such terrible thoughts about Honey. I mean, about Honey and Lila's accident. I just don't know what to think. Honey is just so weird. So weird. She honestly believes we used to be best friends. But we weren't. We hardly knew each other. I really think she's made up a whole fantasy about how close we used to be. She believes her fantasy, and she's trying to force me to believe it too.
Basically, Becca explains that she doesn't want to hurt Honey's feelings. Even if she said anything, she doesn't think Honey would listen. She thinks she'd probably just tune it out or pretend she didn't say it.
You don't know Honey. I don't think she'd even listen to me. She's just so intense. She wants to be my best friend so badly. She's at the door every morning after breakfast. We have to go to school together. We sit together in homeroom and in several classes. She always hunts me down in the lunchroom, and we have to have lunch together. She even brings the same lunches I do.
And then she explains that her parents like Honey because she sucks up. They take Honey's side whenever Becca complains. So Becca's already tried telling her parents, listen, this Honey person's weird. And they're just like, no, she's not. She's fine. What are you talking about? She's good. She's turning to Bill for help, and he's kind of not being that helpful either. Maybe not really seeing what a big problem Honey is.
Becca says Lila's doing better in the hospital. Lila had told her that a day or two before the accident, Honey was asking about her bike, like how the brakes worked. Becca and Bill laugh off the idea that Honey would cut someone's brakes like that.
Except then she looks out the foggy window and she thinks she sees Honey peeking out from behind a tree, spying on their date.
Becca just rushes out of the car like, oh my god, she's here, she's here.
Oh, she doesn't find her. But running out into the cold from the steamy, hot car must have made her get sick because next thing you know, it's Monday afternoon and she has a temperature of 101. She's feeling queasy and she had to stay home from school because she got sick.
Probably has the flu. At 3:15 Monday afternoon, she gets a call from Trish, and you get another story. Honey has been telling everyone that Becca had a breakdown because of Lila's accident, and she was in a hospital.
Right, and so Trish is really worried, and Becca's like, that was completely fabricated. I actually just have a virus. So and then they turn to other subjects. They start talking about Trish's Christmas party. Obviously, Becca's really looking forward to that. And then they talk about how Lila's doing. Apparently, she's going to need a lot of therapy for her legs. But one day she'll be okay. Dang, that's so messed up. Trish says that Honey will have a surprise for her.
Becca is obviously unhappy about the idea that Honey will be involved in her life in some way. She tries to ask Trish to tell her what it is, and Trish just says, you'll know when you see it.
You'll see it when you come back to school.
Well, she doesn't need to wait till then because guess who shows up at Becca's house?
Honey! And she's got Becca's haircut. So now we got Honey stealing her clothing, stealing her accessories, trying to find out what stores she shops at so she can shop at the same stores, figuring out what lunch she's getting, going to school with her, and she's copied her haircut. She's completely copying Becca's life, trying to become her twin.
She does leave eventually, but at 10:30 at night, Honey does call Becca, which is the third time she's called since leaving Becca's house, which is kind of rude because sick people need their rest. She claims that Trish was lying and she never told anyone that Becca was having a breakdown.
And she won't let Becca go back to sleep until she kind of lets her off the hook on that one.
But I have to know that you believe me, Becca. You have to believe me. I never told anyone you had a breakdown. That's just so stupid. Why would I do a thing like that? Honey, really? Becca tried to cut in. But Honey insisted on continuing. I never said those things, Honey said emotionally. Really, Trish lied. I never told her or anyone else that you had a breakdown. Trish is a liar, Becca. You've got to believe me. Becca's head felt as heavy as a bowling ball. She dropped back onto the pillow and shut her eyes. Honey, I'm sick. I really have to sleep, please. Just say you believe me, Honey insisted. Becca took a deep breath. Okay, I believe you. Anything to get her off the phone. Oh, thanks! Honey cried gratefully. Thanks, Becca. I knew you wouldn't believe such a dumb story.
Tuesday morning, Becca wakes up. She's still not feeling 100%, but she needs to come back to school. She needs to put an end to the crazy rumors, and she just wants to get out of the house.
Unfortunately, she walks into school, and there's Honey wearing that blue shirt that had the stain, and the parrot pin is pinned to the collar. Becca is just really miserable over this whole Honey thing, and understandably so.
So at lunch, she takes her chance to talk to Trish about the whole situation with Becca. She really just wants to vent, so she drags Trish out of her lunch, basically makes her skip lunch to listen to her vent about all the crap going on. As they're talking about all the stuff that's going on, they're by the parking lot, and they see that Honey is making out with Eric, Becca's ex.
Trish, look at her, Becca cried heatedly. Her haircut. Her hair is cut like mine. She's wearing a down jacket just like mine. She's wearing my blue top that she took home and never returned. And my parrot pin, the enamel pin that Bill gave me. And she's standing there in the parking lot kissing my old boyfriend.
Becca and Trish, are hanging out, spying on Honey and Eric almost. But then Eric pieces out and Honey rushes to join them. Becca wants alone time with Trish to discuss the Honey situation, and Honey doesn't really take it very well.
Honey's mouth dropped open. Her gray eyes narrowed. What's going on, Becca? She demanded, sounding hurt. There's nothing you can't share with your best friend. That's why I'm talking to Trish, Becca said pointedly. There, Becca thought. That should be clear enough. Now maybe Honey will take the hint. Honey's expression became a blank. It revealed no emotion, but her face turned bright red.
This actually gets Honey to leave, and then Becca relays to Trish that, listen, I think she's super jealous of my other friends. She's acting very possessive and weird. There may have been some link between what happened to Lila and Honey, so I think you should watch out. I think you should be careful.
Trish told Becca to give Honey some tough love.
After lunch, which was no lunch, but just trying to get some support from Trish, Becca returns to find her lockers completely trashed. All the books are just strewn about, her index cards are strewn about, her notes, everything's just totally torn up. She immediately suspects Honey. She thinks this is a revenge thing after what she just said, so she storms off to the girls' room to find that Honey's in there.
She flips! And Honey is actually legit freaked out by Becca at this point in the bathroom, okay, wait, calm down.
Yeah, except
Honey pulls out a silver pistol at Becca and shoots.
But it's a squirt gun!
Gotcha! Another backstory. They used to carry squirt guns all the time. Red plastic ones. They used to shoot each other every time Miss Martin turned her back. They'd be totally soaked at the end of the day.
And this is the final straw for Becca. She finally tells Honey that this shit never happened, freaks out, and runs away screaming.
She's literally running through the hallway screaming, no, 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 no. Kind of leads credence to the
mental breakdown story that Honey's already spreading throughout the school, and she definitely gets some sideways glances from the other students.
She goes to Bill's house to talk about the whole Honey situation, how she's losing her mind. She's told her parents that she's going to Trish's. She tells Bill about a fight that she had with her mother over Honey. Her mom just wants her to deal with Honey until she gets some new friends. Becca is just not having any of that. Bill tells Becca about the guys who ran through the halls, trashing lockers and stealing stuff, and how they ran out the front door and got away. And Becca realizes, oh, it wasn't Honey.
Right, except everything else was Honey. Honey really is completely crazy. Maybe this was her one little hint of the only way you can really deal with this situation. I think sometimes you just have to fight fire with fire. Maybe the only way to really solve the Honey problem is to just go nuts on her. But at this point, it's a little bit too late.
Yeah, she should have done some of that stepsister crap on her. You stuffed a dead dog in my backpack?
Yeah, that's right. Kill her dog, rip open her teddy bear, delete her paper off the computer.
Bill tells Becca that he thinks she's being unfair to Honey and that she's kind of cute. And then it comes out that Honey's actually come onto him and Becca is just furious.
So they kind of leave their little get-together on a sour note. She gets home at 10 p.m. and her mom's in the kitchen. It's one of those where you come home and your mom's there in the kitchen waiting for you. She's got that look on her face.
Her mom knows that she was out with Bill and they have that argument and Becca ends up grounded for life.
Dang. This is like one of the few moments of actual parenting that we get to see in Fear Street.
Well, I would give them that parenting plus if they weren't so bad about the whole Honey situation. So Becca storms to her room, slams the door, and there's someone hidden in her room.
And it's obviously Honey.
Honey says that she came over earlier, spoke to Becca's mom, and accidentally let it slip about Bill.
Yeah, and then she admits that she pretended to leave, but actually went upstairs.
Another story. It's like that time their parents thought they were outside and were searching for them, but they were actually hiding in Becca's attic closet.
Except that Becca, she doesn't even have an attic closet.
And it's really funny because Becca says that, except she just mutters it softly, like she's just given up trying to speak up against Honey's crazy stories.
But I think this brings up an interesting link to the secret bedroom. Kind of like a little shout out to, there was a little bit of a hidden closet in the attic in that one. So I think there's a couple other parallels here we'll get into later.
Honey wanted to stick around to apologize to Becca about letting it slip about Bill, and Becca is done. She wants none of this, and she lets Honey know that they aren't friends, and the only friends that she has are Lila and Trish, and she just doomed Trish.
Yeah, this is it. I think Trish was probably already doomed, but in case she wasn't, now Honey has just a newfound anger, motivation, whatever, to do her in.
Well, it's 2 weeks from when we started the book. It's another Saturday, right? And
Yep.
We're at Trish's Christmas party. Becca's dad convinced her mom to let her go, so that entire scene was just pointless. It was a cliffhanger, like, oh, you're grounded, you can't go to that party, and now she's at the party, so...
She's probably still grounded, just she's ungrounded temporarily for this one party.
Whatever. She does have a good time until Honey shows up wearing that special skirt from the old village and the cat outfit that Becca had planned for so long to wear at this party. And now instead of being the cool, sexy girl, she's that girl that's dressed identically with another girl. And
yeah, they have the same exact outfit, same haircut,
People are laughing at her. They're, oh, that girl was locked up because she went crazy and now look, she's dressed just like the other girl, so she's just a laughingstock now.
Becca basically is just losing it at this point. She's really fitting into that rumor, and she kind of just blows up at Honey, tells her to go away, and gets really louder and just more and more agitated as time goes on.
Go away! Leave me alone! Becca screamed. You're not my best friend, Honey. You're not even my friend. Becca, please! Honey pleaded, embarrassed, but Becca couldn't stop herself. You're not my friend. You're not. Trish and Lila are my friends, not you. Becca, stop! You look ridiculous, Becca screamed, gesturing with both hands to Honey's outfit. You look gross. You look pitiful. Calm down, Becca. Everyone's looking, Honey begged. Go away and I'll calm down. Go away, Honey. Leave me alone. I don't want to see you anymore. Honey's mouth froze wide open. Her face turned pale. She started to say something. Stop, uttered a loud sob. Then her expression turned angry. Her face reddened. She whirled around, her silver skirt flaring, and ran to the stairs, pushing people out of the path. Breathing hard, Becca watched her flee up the stairs. Then she turned away, her features still twisted, in anger. Her hands still knotted into tight fists. Voices rose around the room. Nervous laughter. Questions. What was that about? A girl asked from nearby. I heard she had a breakdown, someone else said in a loud whisper. Why are they dressed alike? Becca heard someone ask. Someone replied, just out of Becca's hearing. The reply was followed by raucous laughter.
Yeah, so now the end result is that Becca is even more embarrassed and upset than she was to begin with, and it's all her own fault. She basically could have played it cool, and instead she caused a giant scene at this party. Everybody's there, and they all just saw her lose it, and they're like, what a crazy girl.
Well, Becca feels really bad because she thinks she's ruined Trish's party, so she actually is trying to see where Trish is just to apologize for causing such a big scene.
But when she sees her, over, Trish is carrying a giant Yule log down the stairs.
Yule log cake.
She's walking down the stairs. She's carrying this big old tray with a cake on it. Becka notices, for some reason, Honey's standing right behind her. And then before you know it, in blink of an eye, everything changes. Trish is hurtling down the stairs. Yule log cake just flying, tray flying, Trish flying, and they land in a heap at the bottom of the stairs.
Trish's head is tilted at an odd angle. She's breathing oddly. Someone calls 911. And Becka looks up and sees Honey still at the top.
When Honey sees people noticing her, she says that she tried to save Trish, and a tray must have been too heavy for her. Trish's body gives a shudder, and her breathing becomes loud and irregular. Becca's just flipping out, like, oh my god, my friend. Honey comes behind Becka, tries to comfort her.
You still have a friend, Honey whispered. I'm right here. I won't go away. I'm still here. No, Becka screamed. Several other kids cried out in surprise. Becka shoved Honey away and climbed to her feet. No! I have to get away, Becka thought. Away! She ran blindly to the front door, pulled it open, and burst outside into 2 black uniformed police officers.
We fast forward to her bedridden, sick, the doctor's at the house. What's happened is that she's finally had that mental breakdown. It came a little bit later, but now it's for real. She's actually on medication to treat her fragile state of mind. She has to take tranquilizers. They make her really weak and groggy. It's the only way the doctor could find for her to deal with the shock of both her friends being hospitalized.
This is 1990s mental health care. But Trish is actually okay. She just broke her neck, but she'll be okay. Honey calls while the doctor and her mom are in the room, and she flips out. Her mom and Dr. Klein talk to her quietly, slowly, calmly. You know what? Here are your tranquilizers. You won't get any phone calls. You'll be fine. Just stay in bed, rest, mentally decompress from what's happening.
So now fast forward another undisclosed number of days. Becka is talking to Lila and Trish on the phone. They're across the hall from each other in the hospital, so that's cool.
Yeah, Lila's bored. Both her legs got broken, so she's gonna need some PT to take care of that. She's raring to get out of there. Trish, on the other hand, she's depressed about what's happened. She's in a lot of pain. She doesn't remember what happened, but she'll be okay.
I mean, the whole school saw her death rattle as she was covered in Christmas Yule log cake, sprawled out on her own floor. That ended a lot worse in Secret Bedroom, so she's lucky to be alive. But what happens is Becca's mom needs to go out for a little bit. She steps out, and a wave of sadness hits Becka.
It's the pills, she thought. The pills are depressing me, making me feel sad. No, she argued with herself, it's not the pills. It's me. It's my life. My life is so sad. So very, very sad. Where are my friends? She cried aloud, feeling herself start to tremble. Where are my friends? All hurt. All in the hospital. All gone. She pulled the covers up to her chin, feeling so sad, feeling sleepy and heavy, as if she weighed 1,000 pounds, and shaky and sad.
In this vulnerable state, she ends up actually taking a phone call, and guess what? It's Honey on the other line. She tells Becka to come over. I guess she wants to cheer her up or something, but Becka doesn't want to go over. First of all, she's sick. Second of all, she hates Honey, but she thinks she hears Bill's voice in the background, and now she gets angry. She actually goes over to the window. She can kind of see in the house next door that Honey and Bill are at the kitchen table. Honey is wearing Becca's best green sweater and the parrot pin. Becka just goes charging in. She goes to the kitchen, straight to the knife block, grabs a knife, marches straight to Honey, and she's about to, I guess, kill her. I guess she actually just wants to murder Honey at this point.
Becka is way too weak. She ends up collapsing and dropping the knife. Bill is just confused. He thought Becka knew what was going on, that Honey had arranged for them to be able to see each other because Becca's parents don't allow him in the house. And he thought that maybe Honey was just helping them meet up. As boyfriends do, he wants to run over to Becka. Stay away from her, she cried, her eyes wild with excitement. She's my friend. Are you crazy? Bill shouted, wrenching out of Honey's grasp. She's fainted. She might have hurt herself. We have to do something. Stay away, Honey repeated, her voice lowering with menace. She's my friend. My best friend. You're crazy, he cried, fear mixing suddenly with anger in his voice. Put that down. What are you doing? Stay away from my best friend, Honey instructed him, her features twisted in ugly fury.
You may have surmised from that passage that what happens is they fight over the knife. This whole part makes no sense. Bill and Honey are fighting each other for the knife. Honey grabs it and ends up stabbing Bill right in the chest. Meanwhile, Becka is semi-conscious at this point. She kind of sees that he's been stabbed and he's bleeding. She doesn't know what happened. She's kind of just slipping in and out of it. It's just totally intense. And then Bill just murmurs a few last words and dies. Just freaking expires right there on the kitchen floor of Honey's house. Honey kind of freaks out. And then suddenly she's got an idea.
She bent down over Becka. She placed the knife in Becca's hands. She carefully wrapped Becca's fingers around the black handle. Honey stood up and stared at the blood-stained knife, now held tightly in Becca's hand. After a few seconds, Becka opened her eyes. Honey dropped down beside her and helped her sit up. "Don't worry," Honey whispered in Becca's ear. "Don't worry, Becka." She cradled Becka in her arms. Groggily, Becka squinted and tried to focus, but she could only see lights. Bright, shimmery lights. The room was a glimmering blur. What was happening? Why couldn't she get in focus? "Don't worry," Honey repeated gently. "I'll take care of you, Becka. I'm your only friend now. I'll take care of you." Becka struggled to see clearly. She uttered a silent gasp when she saw the knife in her hand. Slowly her eyes began to focus. Becka saw the blood-soaked blade, red and silver. It glistened like a shiny Christmas tree ornament. Everything was glistening, sparkling in the light. The red and silver knife in her hand, the kitchen counters, the boy lying face down beside her. "I'll take care of you, Becka," Honey whispered, soothingly holding on to Becka. "I won't let the police know what you did. We'll make up a story, won't we, Becka? We won't let them know that you murdered Bill." "Huh?" Becka struggled to get up, but Honey held on, keeping her arms around Becca's shoulders, whispering soothingly into her ear. "What did I do?" Becka whispered. "What?" She stared at the red and silver knife in her hand. Then she lowered her gaze to Bill, lying so still in a dark puddle of blood. "What did I do?" Becka whispered. "I'll tell them you did it in self-defense, Becka," Honey said softly. "They won't have to know the truth. They'll never know you stabbed Bill, because I'll protect you. I'll protect you from now on, because I'm your best friend. I'm your best friend, and I'm your only friend, aren't I? Becka, aren't I? Aren't I your best friend? Aren't I?" "Of course I am. I'm your best friend, and I will never let them know what you did to Bill. Never, never, never." "Thank you, Honey," Becka whispered gratefully.
She's managed to kill off Bill, right? So she's got Becca's support network, her two best friends, and the guy that she loves. The book ends here, but the reader can imagine that the possibilities are endless. That's basically the whole plot of the book there. We went pretty in depth on this one. The reason we did that is a really new direction that R.L. Stine went into here, and we wanted to kind of really dig down and figure out what it was that happened in the story exactly, and what the sequence of events was, so we can go back and kind of take a look at it and analyze it further. And as we analyze it, why don't we talk about the nitpicks?
Becca's parents might have liked Honey sucking up, but she's literally breaking and entering.
All the time.
I don't understand how that's okay in their eyes. I get the idea if she's a nuisance or Becca doesn't like her. I get the parenting, oh, just suck it up, she'll make new friends. But this girl is breaking into your house. How is that okay? What parent would be okay with a person adjusting like that?
Yeah, although overall I gotta give these parents pretty good marks. As far as Fear Street parents go, they did okay. They were somewhat concerned about their kid. Some of these other Fear Street parents, right, they just let them go gallivanting off with whoever. At least they kind of read up on who the boy interest was, and they were like, he's not good for you. Which was wrong, by the way. He was an okay kid as far as, like, Fear Street boyfriends go.
They were not okay with the boyfriend, but they're okay with Honey.
Yeah, that's messed up. She's the actual crazy one here. I guess we didn't have too many nitpicks, because it's now time to get into the mythos.
There's a lot of callbacks to previous characters, so let's just go through the characters from the previous books.
Right, this book really stands out as being super interconnected with all the previous characters we've read in the book series thus far. This is like the heart of the octopus here, and everything just stretches out and links back to every other book, all the way back to the first book in the series.
Very fitting, I think, for the most unique book in the series to be so connected to everything.
So first of all, we've got Bill's best friends are Mikey Wakely and Clay Parker, whom we met in Silent Night. And as we remember, they were kind of a couple of hooligans, and as you might expect, they're actually the reason that he got suspended from school the previous year. What happened was Mikey and Clay spray painted the school, and he was actually with them at the time, kind of an accessory to vandalism.
The next person is Dina from The Wrong Number. Dina was actually Becca's best friend in 4th grade. That's why she's so confused about the honey thing, because she knows who her best friend in 4th grade was. Dina actually shows up at Trisha's party, and she's looking for Jade because Dina has Jade's car keys, so Jade is mentioned.
Then we got David Metcalf from The New Girl. He was in a supply closet with Mary Harwood, quote-unquote tramp. His name is dropped at the party. Also, he has a mock wrestling session with
Billy at the party. Lisa Bloom, she is name dropped because she's the one that somehow hears the rumor about David and Mary, so once again, gossip girl. But at the party, she's clinging cozily to a red-haired boy, and by the way, Corey, he has curly black hair, so...
You're right, Anna. 21 books later, finally, Corey and Lisa break up. Wow, I guess they really were fundamentally incompatible at their very core. We also get Ricky Shore. Apparently, he's a little bit more popular now. He's got a station wagon, and he offers the 3 actual best friends a ride. There's no room in the car because he's got a bunch of new friends that are mooching rides off him, and he says, there's room in my lap, which is sexist and not funny, but, that's the kind of jokes he makes.
Well, actually, he never made jokes like that. He made bad jokes. He never made harassing sort of jokes. He's also looking for beer at the party, so clearly he's had this personality transplant.
You know what? He survived the Halloween party, and now he's just like, YOLO.
Well, he survived the overnight and Halloween party, so...
He's seen some shit.
You also run into Kari Taylor from Party Summer. She asks about Becca's breakdown, and then she talks about how she's going to be spending Christmas break with Riva from Silent Night and her dad.
Oh, you poor, sweet, innocent summer child. You actually think you're going to get to go on a vacation with Riva?
Knowing Riva, she probably just invited Kari along to wax her skis and clean up after her, because that's the type of person Riva is.
Or there is no ski vacation, and that's it. That's the whole joke. As far as Riva's concerned, she's laughing her ass off because she told this kid that they're going to go on vacation together, and there is no such plan.
We also run into Gary Brandt. He had his leather jacket stolen from his locker when those hooligans came in. He also brought a Guns N' Roses Christmas album to the party, because that's a very timely reference, R.L. Stine. Thank you for that.
That's all the people that we could find that are callbacks to earlier books. If we missed one, let us know in the comments section or tweet at us. There's a lot to talk about in terms of the various conspiracy theories we've been working on. And this one begs to be lumped in with all of that other stuff because Honey is literally acting completely insane. So why is it always the new kid in school that's always at the start of these Fear Street hijinks? Right from the very beginning, the new girl, Anna, is the new kid in school and turns out to be a crazy whatever psycho. Here we are basically right at the end of the first semester, right before winter break, and we have a new kid showing up and ruining Becca's life. And this happens all the time. 2 books ago, we had...
First date?
Yeah, the first date. Some new kid rolls in and turns out he's a serial killer. This stuff just keeps happening over and over again. Either they're the perpetrator or sometimes the new kid's the victim. But it seems to be like the new kid motif just keeps popping up over and over again.
There seems to be an absurd number of new kids that pop up per school year. Right,
it's like a pipeline, right? They keep cycling these kids in. Most of them turn out to not be actual kids. In Halloween Party, where we have a 30-year-old.
Or in First Date, where we had a 20-year-old.
So that seems to be a pretty common theme. And again, 1, 2 stories like this may be a coincidence, but we're seeing this happen over and over again. I'm starting to believe a lot of the hype about Fear Street, where everybody was saying, a lot of bad things happen there. Well, that's kind of true, but it's not just Fear Street. It's the entire town of Shadyside, and Shadyside High specifically seem to be an epicenter for just suspicious activity. Let's talk about Honey, right? She's the suspicious character here when looked at from the point of view of all the other characters. She disappears after 4th grade. She won't say where she went. There's just a vague upstate. By the way, when we were talking about in the last episode regarding the location of Shadyside, and we said it was probably northeastern Ohio. Okay, upstate doesn't really work. If you're in northeastern Ohio, you're already upstate of your particular state, maybe?
Someone's father has a business trip to Akron, Ohio.
There you go. So that now validates our Ohio theory, possibly. So there's different ways of looking at it. This is not the first time somebody's mentioned going upstate. This is probably the 3rd mention so far in the series where somebody says, oh yeah, something something upstate. So there's somewhere that has an upstate. Not New York, though. So it's something to think about. So she disappears in 4th grade, and now we're basically, I guess this must be 11th or 12th grade for these kids. Here she is again. Now, how about you, Anna? But I remember pretty well the kids I used to hang out with when I was like 8 or 9 years old.
For the most part, yes.
Yeah, like somebody that claims to be your best friend, you'd think you'd probably at least vaguely recollect them. I mean, I could see maybe forgetting their name, but...
I moved away from my hometown when I was 8 or 9 years old. We had sold our house in my hometown before we had purchased our house in where we moved, across a different state. So for a little bit, we had to stay at a family friend's house, and they had a daughter who was my age. We were in the same class. We grew up together, and we had a lot of fun. It was maybe we spent 2 or 3 weeks living at their place. And then after I had moved, we were pen pals for a year or two. And then we just lost out of touch because you grow up. And then Facebook happened. I found her on Facebook and I friended her. And her response was, "I'm sorry, I don't really know who you are. My mom says we used to be friends when we were younger, but..."
Ooh.
And I was like, well then, I might remember people I knew growing up 8, 9 years old, but some people just don't remember.
Oh my god, that's cold. And by the way, who says that on Facebook? Just friend him back and just shrug your shoulders and be like, whatever.
Oh no, she did friend me back, but she sent me a message.
Why would she send such a bitchy message? Holy shit. Oh my god, it's terrible. Just say nothing. Whatever the case is, she didn't make much of an impression, and she's been away for almost 10 years, and now, supposedly, her mom just died. Supposedly, her dad is around, but we never see him, and supposedly, they moved to the house next door, but you only ever see her in that house one time. I guess I'd have to say, if she wasn't really living there, maybe Becca's parents would have been more suspicious, so I guess she must actually be living there, right?
The corporation had a lot at stake there, and it's not like they can't buy houses. Maybe that's a corporation-owned house for their little pet project.
That could be the case. On the one hand, we have the possibility that this is just tying right in to our conspiracy theory, right? Corporation has their hand in all of these things. Supposedly, that's what we're postulating here. And this is just a freaking insane thing where we have this crazy kid making up... I mean, you guys just heard us cite story after story after story that Honey makes up, completely fabricates as far as anybody else is concerned. In fact, some of them you can see right then and there, just based on what's already happened, the events that have already transpired, are false. A lot of them go back many, many years, and we have to assume they're false based on the fact that Becca or her friends can't remember any of this stuff. It all points to an unstable mind in Honey.
Or I think it's a very interesting government project testing how easy it is to sort of manipulate a situation and how far the reach can be.
The other thing you have here is that theme of fevered or diseased mind being susceptible to this kind of manipulation. So, for example, in Secret Bedroom, we have the main character has a really terrible fever, and a doctor comes and gives her some drugs, and while she's sick is when she can't really resist being possessed by the ghost. And now we have the analogous situation where Becca is so sick and distraught over all the events that have transpired that her parents actually have to get a doctor, and again, the doctor comes and she gets some medicine. Her mind is left weakened and open to suggestibility. Now, in this case, she's not being possessed by a ghost, but we have Honey at the end. What is the last line of the book? "Thank you, Honey." That signals a defeat. It's a white flag from Becca. Her mind is surrendered to this full frontal assault from just the insanity that is Honey. Just decided not to fight, and it's easier to just give in at that point. She just doesn't have the strength to fight it anymore. So we have all of these themes coming together, which are very similar to previous themes where we've had. And so what's the alternative?
Well, isn't it possible that Becca is the one that's lying?
So that would be the one possible alternative. The question is, yes, all of this is very convincing, but it's still a conspiracy theory. Well, let's look at it the other way. What if Honey remembers everything correctly, and Becca and the other Fear Street kids are the ones who have forgotten? Now, first of all, just logically, by Occam's razor, this is probably not the case. What's the simplest answer? Is it that 10 people forgot something, or that one person is making something up? So that's probably not the case. But you could look at it another way. You could say Honey has been upstate for 10 years, been off her Fear Street dosage, so to speak, and now she's back. She's the only sane one compared to these people that have been stuck in the clutches of the corporation this whole time. Maybe she's the normal one. We've also seen in the past that people that are new and show up fall victim to the effects much more rapidly. So they go from being somebody that's relatively sane to somebody that's unhinged very, very quickly. Whereas the people that have been there for a long time, they may have their own innate personality quirks amplified, but their body has built up a tolerance, so to speak. This is something we mentioned in a previous cast.
Well, it could be something like the stepsister, where the older sister was already psychologically unstable and they just needed that push her over the edge.
That's true. We know Honey was a little bit of a weird kid. I think everybody's in agreement on that one. Let's say they forgot all the good things about her, where she actually maybe used to be their friend. Maybe they forgot that, but they definitely remember that she was like a total shy, whatever, weirdo kid and didn't quite fit in. So let's say that she went upstate and maybe that didn't really change. And then the fact that her mom died recently, her mom passed away, really triggered just an episode. That coupled with coming back to Fear Street, and now all of a sudden we got a full-blown mania. This is pretty much falling right into place with kind of a lot of the theories that we've had. You don't even necessarily need to get the corporation involved. This could just be the natural dosage in the groundwater. You're living at Fear Street. The clay's just there. Just right under your feet, right beneath the frozen ground there. So who knows, those old houses built on the clay, you're just breathing it in the air, you're drinking it in the water, and this girl just goes nuts. Well, by the end of both of them, really, Becca's just got sucked into that spiral of weirdness. The other thing we can talk about here is the police response. When you're talking about testing people's perception, one thing we had earlier was missing. And in missing, you had a cult.
Decimated the police force.
And since the police force got decimated, we've had much quicker response times. And this time's no different. When
Trish is pushed down the steps,
the police show up very quickly, long before the paramedics do, and they're there questioning everybody. And I'm starting to think, okay, all these young new cops on the police force, do you think maybe they've got two jobs? They're nominally the police force, but they're actually keeping tabs on all of these social experiments and what have you. Where did they all come from? Maybe that whole thing earlier with the cult, that could have actually been a setup. That could have actually been, I don't want to say a false flag operation, because all those people were obviously in the cult. But it could have been that all of those people were specifically targeted and manipulated to become members of that cult, basically set up. The FBI swoops in, makes the arrest, and suddenly, boom, Shadyside Police Department gone. All of the Shadyside town elders, everybody that could have formed any kind of backbone for resistance to what is happening to their town, gets completely vacated and put away. We know that they're capable of coming in and doing a surgical targeting of somebody and causing them to become a little bit mentally unhinged, become open to ideas that they normally wouldn't be. And what do you know? All of them had those monkey skulls, right? The green glowing monkey skulls. The whole premise behind this cult, the thing we've been using to tie it back together, is suddenly making sense now. What do? You give them all this large dose of the mineral that they carry around with them at all times, the symbol of this new club that they're in. And now you make them susceptible to whatever cockamamie idea is behind this. Probably the CEO of that corporation was inconvenient in some way as well and had to be dragged in and become the fall guy. All of this is basically just a setup to get all of these people, including a large portion of the police department, to become accessories to the crime of the kidnapping of those FBI agents, and then they all get put away. It's all tied up neatly in a bow, and nobody's the wiser. In fact, Anna, how long did it take us to figure out this particular aspect of the theory? Here we are in episode 21, and I believe missing was like episode 4 or something like that. We've been prattling on about the skulls, and we never saw the connection between what a clear effect the clay mineral has on people's mental well-being and the susceptibility to suggestion versus all of those cult members carrying around this glowing freaking part of that very thing that they're touching every single day. It's right next to them. They're breathing and touching and ingesting all of that residue every single day, day in, day out, on top of the regular dose they get with the water. This is a very neat way to wrap up anybody that might have suspected or known what was going on. You saw this again with Halloween Party, where they eliminate the kid with the scientific knowledge that was making some experiments that were getting a little too close to the truth. Boom. Just bring in a crazy person and make that kid disappear. This is what they do. Anybody that could possibly stand in the way or is on path to standing in their way, they'll get rid of. What do you think?
Calm down, Alex Jones. We've seen the government do experiments on entire towns before. This is not new. It's not unique to Fear Street books. It is entirely possible. And it would be a spooks project as well. I could see that in real life.
So, 90s things. We got the Guns N' Roses Christmas album.
So they never actually made a Christmas album, but I do think if they ever did make one, it would be in the 90s, early 90s. We did have the 2006 reprint, so we're trying to figure out what would fit into that category. The Bruce Springsteen Santa Claus is Coming to Town song that was playing in the party, I looked it up. He recorded that song on Long Island at a gig in 1975 in December, and then he released the song as a B-side to My Hometown in 1985. So that totally works as a 90s reference, but it could also work as a 2006 reference because Bruce Springsteen is still around.
Right, he's still around. One thing I picked up on was that Becka is described as wearing yoga pants at one point. Now, I'm not very fashion savvy, but I do know yoga pants are a thing right now in 2017. I have no idea if they were a thing back in 1992, or if it's a reprint thing, or if
I think it's
coming back into style, or what the deal is.
I want to say it's more a reprint thing. My knowledge of early 90s fashion comes from the Babysitters Club. They wore leggings a lot, and that was the big thing. They didn't call them yoga pants. I feel like calling the tight pants like that yoga pants is going to be more 2000s.
What I really want to see is if we could get a reprint copy of any of the books where sandals are referred to as thongs. Because honestly, after the thong song came out in the late 90s, that would have had to change in the 2006 reprints, right? Am I the only one thinking that? Just call them flip-flops. That's basically it for the 90s things we could find. Let's just talk about what we think about the book.
So I get Becka in not wanting to hurt someone's feelings. She thought Honey was just an okay person that was kind of weird, and she didn't want to hurt her feelings because she cried a lot. I get that, but at the same time, if you're in my room without being invited in and you've lied to me about how you got in and you're stealing my shit, you're never coming into my life. Like, I'm sorry. The line must be drawn here and no further.
Becka was surprisingly chill about those things. I think I probably would have flipped out and told Honey to get out and pushed her out of the house, slammed her in her face, probably sprinkled it liberally with a few expletives. I mean, you know what worked? When she accosted Honey in the bathroom. Yeah, maybe that wasn't Honey's fault, that what happened in her locker, but accosting her, getting angry and in her face, that worked. You keep that up. Unfortunately, at that point, that was already too late. She was already deep within Honey's web, deep in the honey pot, so to speak.
It's unfortunate. I did feel for Becka. I thought that R.L. Stine did a really good job, as I mentioned before, writing that trio friendship, and I think that by taking her friends away from her, he did make Becka super sympathetic as a character, even though she was sort of a blank slate. If you think about in First Date, the main character played the saxophone. That was a thing. She had to work in her dad's restaurant. That's a thing. She had a backstory. For Becka, we didn't have a backstory. We know nothing about her except the stories that aren't true told to us by Honey. So that's why the gaslighting worked so well, because we don't have anything about her, and maybe she's just like such a blank slate that's why she starts being such an easy target.
And you can see the effect it has on her as her friends leave her. First Lila, then Trish. This is taking a toll on Becka, and you can see physically the effects of this. She's really taking it very hard, and it does make you sympathize with her. And you see that just slow descent into madness on her part.
Let's remove the whole corporation Fear Street mythos from this. And
right, because you don't need it. Honey is freaking nuts on her own. She doesn't need anybody's help to be a crazy psycho, I don't think. And honestly, one of the craziest characters we've had so far.
But she's crazy in a way, not an overt crazy.
Oh, she's very insidious. You see her planting the seeds for the entire plan earlier on with telling the whole school that Rebecca had a mental breakdown. That was like some scheming on her part.
And just getting in on Becca's parents. Oh yeah, she's such a good good girl. She's bringing your homework in for you. She's checking up on you. You need that good influence in your life.
Yeah, what did Rebecca do to her in 4th grade? That's what I want to know. She's been plotting this whole thing out for years, and now it's her chance.
This is some Justine Cameron level shit.
Right? She probably murdered her parents and moved to Shadyside just to exact her revenge.
Maybe Becca was somehow at fault at her mother dying. Maybe Becca was not paying attention one day while driving somewhere else, and then got in another accident, or caused another accident.
Oh my god, right? She's such a bad driver. You know what I want to see? I want to see, like, Honey and Reva. What would happen if, like, Honey was targeting Reva, for instance?
I don't think Honey would fare very well against Reva.
That would be really interesting. Or what about, like, Honey and one of the really badass protagonists we've had in the past that was just like a no-nonsense? How about the kids from Wrong Number, for instance?
You mean Dina and Jade, who were also in this book?
Yeah, let's say Honey go up against Dina and Jade. How would she fare? There's really some questions here.
I like to see her in The Prom Queen versus the friend that always wants to win.
Yeah, how about that? Or versus Justine.
Well, I think that's the thing, because remember Trish kept telling her, you need to show some tough love.
Yeah.
And I think had Becca shown her tough love right from the start, like, excuse me, that's my pin, you better give it back. Get out of my house. No one told you could be in here. I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah, Honey just walked right over her.
She just got steamrolled.
It was pretty bad. She got completely steamrolled.
But the thing is, do you think she was targeting other people until she ended up with her?
It seems like she went right for her right off the bat, right?
I mean, we're not...
She was zeroed in. She ignored her friends.
No, but I'm asking...
She, like, a trail of messed up dead people behind her on her way to Shadyside?
No, I'm asking... We don't know when she started at Shadyside High. We just know that she ran into Becca's house that one afternoon. But maybe she's been at Shadyside for the past month. But because Becca's...
But how would you transfer homerooms after a month?
Well, if she's that nondescript as a person to begin with, just hide in a corner. Becca's wrapped up in her own little love triangle.
Yeah.
And she has her own trio of friends. Why does she care about the new girl? Like, maybe she didn't notice her. Or you could transfer homerooms. The school seems to not really be very strict about things. You could just request, like, listen, that's my neighbor. We've become really good friends. I think it would help me transition better to this new school if I were in her homeroom. You know, I've only been here for a month and this would really help me. A lot of schools would actually be amenable to that. Maybe Honey's been there for longer than we think.
She's been scoping out the place looking for an easy victim?
Yeah.
Could be. Definitely a new direction for this book. This book specifically takes a different tack than the usual Fear Street book.
It has an unsettling ending. To be fair, I do think the ending for Lights Out and First Date are unsettling in their particular problematic ways, but this unsettling is just unsettling. I think this is the first Fear Street book where the protagonist loses.
I'm glad you brought up Lights Out and First Date. So in those books, you have the protagonist end up with somebody at the end that was basically like a second tier bad guy. They could have been the bad guy. It turns out they weren't. And then somehow ending up with them is a victory, even though it's not. You could almost see like the protagonist's victories in those books as a Pyrrhic victory. But in this book, there's just complete defeat. This is the one antagonist. Here you have the last line, basically the protagonist on bended knee admitting defeat. Thank you, honey.
Apparently, a lot of people were upset about how this book turned out. So R.L. Stein had a lot of angry letters thrown his way. They did a contest. Scholastic and R.L. Stein set up a contest to write a sequel to this book. Because you guys don't like the ending? Fine, write your own damn ending, I guess was the mindset. The sequel to this book, I think it's book 50, is Best Friend 2. And it's actually written by a fan. We get to read Fear Street fanfiction, which is great.
Best Friend 2, The Unfriending. It's fast forward, they're like in college, and Becca unfriends Honey, and hijinks and hilarity ensue.
Did you have any thoughts when you were reading this book?
Okay, so starting from like page 40, I was just freaking out. Like, oh my god, what is going on? WTF, this is nuts.
How did you think this book was going to end?
I guess I didn't see this coming. I thought it would just go the way every other Fear Street book comes out, where one way or another, the main character is going to prevail. I didn't see Becca figuring out a way out of it on her own, but I figured like maybe Bill would help her, or maybe Honey would just fall on her own sword somehow and it would all work out. That's not what happened. I was very surprised by the ending, and pleasantly so. I think it really kicked the book up a notch for me, so for me, I'd say I like this. This is one of the better ones out there. How about you?
I remember as I was reading the book just going, what a horrifying position to be in. This person is just stuck on you. And then just ascribing these obviously untrue stories. I'm not a very outgoing person, so for me, this is like a nightmare situation where someone just will not give me space. And that in itself is just horrifying. The idea that someone is just going through my stuff, taking my stuff, not leaving when I ask them to leave, calling me every 5 minutes, that is horrifying to me. And then to the point of making up stories that didn't happen, that would drive me absolutely insane. So this book, even without the horrifying ending and the breakdown for Becka, is already probably one of my worst nightmares.
So do you kind of see yourself as a Becka?
I would not have been steamrolled. I don't have the patience for that. But this is a nightmare situation for me. And I just remember when I got to the end, I threw the book onto you and said, you need to read this right now because we need to talk about it. And it was like 11 p.m. at night.
Yeah, and then you spent the entire next day working on the outline because you were so engrossed in this story.
I didn't know how it would end. I did think it would turn out that something was Becca's fault. I just didn't think it'd be that. I thought that maybe Honey was right about these stories, and for some reason Becka has been suppressing it because there's something wrong with her, and it'll come out like...
Oh, just like Sleepwalker, right?
Yeah, but it was not to be. It was more off the wall. And I could see how maybe a teenage fan base would have an issue with this particular story, especially since all the other stories seem to be a nice bow at the end. But I like this change. I do think maybe R.L. Stine, as good as he is, I think a better author would have
done a better treatment.
Yeah, I do think in the hands of a better writer, it would have gone up to the next level. I had fun with it. It's different from the rest of his books. It surprised me. It showed me that R.L. Stine is willing to take risks with his Fear Street series, which after First Day, I just thought these books are just getting so repetitious. We need something different. That's never going to happen. It's always going to end the same way, and the crazy toxic boyfriend character will end up dating her in the end, and it's just awful. And this book is different.
Yeah, in this book, the bad boy boyfriend gets killed, and she ends up with the crazy girlfriend instead. The other thing is, you got something happening here. Two things. First of all, for me personally, the shorter books have been better. So I feel like when he trims the fat, it makes for a more efficient storytelling and more enjoyable experience for me. That's one thing. The other thing that we've noticed here is we had two flubs recently. We had The Knife and we had First Date. Both of these, for me personally, and from what I'm just hearing for you as well, have made you kind of question where this series is going. I was thinking like, oh no, is this what this is devolving into? I was really starting to lose hope for this podcast, and I was thinking like, oh, how can we keep doing this if the books are gonna get this bad? But once again, just like with the Super Chillers, we have a book that kicks it up a notch, brings it back on track, and I'm really looking forward to the books we got coming up next.
How did you feel about R.L. Stine not attributing a motivation behind Honey's actions?
Well, I feel fine about that. I feel fine. I can, in my own mind, attribute a few different possible motivations. They all work pretty well for me, and I'm fine with it. You know, this is one of those books where you don't get the antagonist's point of view at any point. Sometimes he sprinkles in a chapter that's like a teaser. Even going back to the first book, you get one chapter from Anna's point of view.
Willa, I think her actual
Willa,
name is.
right. And here you don't. You don't get anything from the antagonist's point of view. It's all from Becca's point of view.
There's not even that last showdown, evil villain, explain reasoning scene. There's none of that. It's just Honey keeps doing her gaslighting and Becca just gets pushed off the deep end and you never really find out what happens. And I think it worked.
It worked really well. Obviously, if Honey explained her motivation, then it would ruin the entire effect of what she's trying to accomplish here.
Right.
So she can never do that at any point.
Yeah, and I like how R.L. Stine realized that and did not give a reasoning. Because you're right, it would ruin the entire effect.
Yeah. So basically, at the end of the book, it's a battle of wills. It's Honey's will to continue with her narrative versus Becca's will to resist. And Becca's will to resist is whittled away at by the loss of first one best friend, then another, then all the medication she has to go on, and finally seeing the boy she loves murdered in front of her eyes. It all takes a toll, and she just doesn't have the will to fight any longer. Really interesting story of going from the first chapter where she's in charge, she's breaking up with her boyfriend, she's mad at him for not being as upset as she thinks he should be, to the last chapter where she's completely broken and she says, "Thank you, honey." And then that's it. Just, she's been broken down step by step. All of the things that keep her up have been removed one by one, and you saw it happen right before your eyes. It really is something.
How many parrot pins out of 5 would you give this book?
I'm giving this guy a solid 2.5 parrot pins out of 5. What about you?
2.5?
Yeah.
I thought you'd give it more.
Nah, I'm giving it 2.5. We have to remember, you're operating on like a Fear Street scale, and I'm operating on, this is on the entire general scale. I wouldn't be able to recommend this book to everybody. I think if you're reading all of the Fear Street books, you should definitely hit this one up. But there's a couple of other Fear Street books that are better.
I'd have to say, I give this book a solid 3.25 out of 5 parrot pins. I mean, yes, you're right. I'm judging on a Fear Street scale. And I know this is a controversial book that a lot of people really hated because it's very different. I really like the change. You know, we've been reading a lot of Fear Street books.
Right. So we're a little bit biased here. Any breath of fresh air, a wind blowing from a different direction comes as a relief to us. We're going to grab onto that and we're going to love it.
So I truly appreciate how different this book is. And just because it's my personal nightmare too. Like, I need my space, get away from me person. This book speaks to me. So yeah, 3.25 parrot pins.
Cool. Speaking of going in a different direction, coming up, we have Fear Street Cheerleaders, The First Evil.
So this is the first book in the Cheerleaders trilogy. There's obviously the first evil, the second evil, and then there's the third evil. I know that the Super Chillers have 2 other books in this cheerleader saga type thing, but the first 3 cheerleader books do seem to be in a trilogy. So we're starting with, obviously, Fear Street Cheerleaders, The First Evil, When the Cheers Turn to Screams. There is a girl standing in the front holding one of her palms. The palm has like blood on it, and there's a skull, it seems, in the middle of it. And behind her, there are 2 other cheerleaders. The girl in the front looks sort of possessed, like demonic almost. So I think that some girls are trying out to be cheerleaders, but not everyone makes the team. And some people who didn't make the team are on the wait list and they want to be on the team. Things start happening to people that have made the team or are already on the team, and hijinks ensue.
Okay, so what's the weapon?
I'm going to say witchcraft.
Ooh, we haven't had that before.
And I'm going to say female victim and female antagonist.
Okay.
And if you've seen Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, season 1, yes, I did take the plot from Buffy and make it my prediction.
Yeah, I think I remember that episode. What I think is going to happen is I don't think it's a tryout thing. I think these are seasoned cheerleaders, maybe like juniors or seniors. They're going to have some kind of weird like hazing ritual maybe, and then it goes wrong. The weapon is going to be the pom-pom, and somebody's going to get suffocated or something with it. Because you could see like a bloody imprint of somebody's face on that palm. So you figure like their face was all bloody and then the palm got like smashed onto their face. The murderer will be a cheerleader and the victim will be a fellow cheerleader.
Male or female?
Oh, they're all female.
Locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded. All right, I look forward to this. This is not going to be a letdown. We're not going to have another decrease in quality. I feel like we're going to have a good set of books coming up, a trilogy. Hopefully we're going to get these out to you guys in the next month or so, all for the Halloween month. That should be good.
And remember to check out our giveaways and please enter.
Yeah, it'll be fun. All right, we'll be announcing winners soon and see you guys later.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to another thrilling episode of Rhett Read Podcast.
If you like what you hear, give us a shout out.
If not, let us know why in the comments.
Don't forget to rate, review, comment, share, like, and subscribe.
You can follow us at Rhett Read Podcast on Twitter and Facebook.
Or send suggestions or fan mail to red.read.podcast@gmail.com.
Until next time.
Peace.